The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes only, and is protected under Article 17 and 107 in the United States Fair Use Code. This video is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the video.
To be honest, my expectations for Under the Skin, the latest film by UK director Jonathan Glazer, weren't very high. Judging from the posters and the trailers, it just seemed like a generic art film filled with pretentious imagery to let film festival goers feel like they're smarter than they actually are for 2 hours. But Under the Skin completely blew my expectations out of the water. Not because it's a good film, but because it's an absolute train wreck, and just like the sun going down at night, you can guarantee that this movie will be a frontrunner for worst film of 2014. Scarlett Johansson plays an alien who comes to Earth to prey on unsuspecting men in Scotland, and the reason she's doing this is, it's frustratingly unclear, and the entire movie is like that. Under the Skin completely mistakes vagueness for pathos. I'm sure Jonathan Glazer knows what's going on in the movie, and I'm sure he thinks it's brilliant, but he doesn't even attempt to get that meaning across to the audience who are investing time and money into the film. If he wanted to make this film for himself or his friends, then that's great, but if that's the case, why release it in theatres and charge people to go see it? Pretentious imagery is one thing though, and while those aspects are frustrating, I can't deny that Under the Skin is well shot and there are some tableaus that will stick with you, but the vagueness spreads to the mechanics of the film in terms of its universe and its execution. We're never told just how this world works or how anything Johansson's character does affects her or the world around her. Her character does go through a change during the movie, but it's not reacting to anything, it's just happening because the script says that she should be undergoing a change, and without any sort of clear motivation or rationale for anything she does or her thought process behind her actions, it leads to an incredibly uninvolving movie that is not only incapable of truly drawing you in, but it seems like it was deliberately designed not to. One scene where she kills a man in cold blood and abandons the man's baby at the scene should be shocking, but because the threat isn't human, it also goes against her previously established actions, and we don't understand any of the thought process behind it, then it's just another example of detachment through cinematic ineptitude. One interesting conceit of the movie is that a large portion of it was filmed with hidden cameras. While Scarlett Johansson is driving around looking for her prey, apparently some of the people she talks to are real people who aren't aware that they're in a movie. This is an intriguing experiment, sure, but it actually takes you out of the movie because you're constantly asking yourself as a viewer, okay, so was that guy an actor, or was he unaware, or what? Movies like Borat and Bad Grandpa can make this dissonance work because it's played for laughs, but Under the Skin is not a comedy. But then again, it's not really a drama, or a horror, or a romance, or anything. It pretty much lacks a genre because it lacks any sort of commitment or consummation to what it wants to be. Also, the casting of Scarlett Johansson puts another barrier between the viewer and the film. She's a great actor, and she is great given the material, but casting someone as recognisable or as famous as Scarlett Johansson and then trying to pass her off as a normal person in a hidden camera movie just doesn't ring true. There's a reason Johnny Knoxville is covered in pounds of makeup in Bad Grandpa. If a complete unknown and obscure person was cast in Under the Skin, then it would be easier to believe, because I know that if I was one of the guys caught on film for the movie, then all you'd hear me saying is, holy crap, it's Black Widow. But what really pushes Under the Skin over the edge from a pretentiously benign movie into something akin to a cinematic train wreck is just how completely ineptly it's executed. The script and dialogue are terrible, as no one acts or speaks like an actual human being. I know that Johansson is an alien from God knows where, but what's everyone else's excuse? There is one character who is believable, but his inclusion is so desperate for audiences' sympathy that it's almost pathetic in its attempts to involve the viewer emotionally. The film also has a dull episodic nature. The first 60 to 70 minutes of the film can be summed up as Scarlett drives around, finds a guy, disposes of him, and repeats 3 more times. It's simply boring as hell, and when the movie does change the format, it does so in an unorganic way. The mechanics of this universe are constantly changing, as are the motivations of the character and her actions, even though we didn't really know what they were to begin with. Characters are introduced and then completely disappear from the movie with no rhyme or reason, and the movie just keeps changing the rules. One guy gets disposed of by the alien, which pretty much means he gets sent into a black void from which there is no escape. Then all of a sudden, he escapes. How? The alien also goes through moments of change, but because we have no idea what its rationale is or any sort of understanding into how it thinks, then these moments fall completely flat. And real talk for a minute, I know that I'm going to get fans of this movie or even this type of movie disliking this video or rushing into the comment section to tell me variations of "you just don't get it" or "all the things you said were the point of the movie." Then I simply ask you to stop being such a doormat to this type of media. I understand that the abstract nature of some of the aspects of Under the Skin can be chalked down to personal preference, but things such as the disconnect between the viewer and the film, the poor structure and the lack of any sort of cohesion even in the context of its own setting, are objective problems regardless of one's preference of film. The film's problems are literally endless and I could go on for hours, but suffice it to say, Under the Skin is a boring, plodding, incompetent, pretentiously hollow and direly handled piece of garbage. And what's most depressing is that it's getting so much attention and praise precisely because it is a boring, plodding, incompetent, pretentiously hollow and direly handled piece of garbage. Under the Skin gets half a star out of 5.
You don't want to wake up, do you?
Show me